Welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Elizabeth Eve King.
I'm Andrea Goyan. Elizabeth and I used to do improv comedy together in bars in San Francisco before we were legal. And then we lost touch.
And a few years ago, we discovered each other, found we're both legal, and we're both painters,
Performers,
animal lovers,
Pilates teachers.
naturalists.
Elizabeth, I am not a naturalist. I love nature, but I don't know where you thought that.
Well, loving nature counts. The point is, we're
long lost
friends.
And we're both award-winning fiction writers.
After one of my short stories appeared in MetaStellar, we started this show.
MetaStellar is an online magazine, and we publish original science fiction, fantasy, and horror. There's a link below for more information.
We're delighted again to be talking with Eric Guignard. He's an editor of dark speculative fiction, operating from the shadowy outskirts of Los Angeles, where he runs the small press Dark Moon Books, which we were talking about last time, has great stuff. I suggest you check it out. He's also twice won the Bram Stoker Award, has over 100 stories and nonfiction author credits. Links below so you can find his work. And outside of that glamorous jet-setting work of indie fiction, he's a technical writer, a college professor, and stumbles home each day to a wife, children, dogs, and a terrarium filled with mischievous beetles. Welcome back, Eric.
Yes, and I think we're not going to see the Beatles, but we are going to see somebody.
We are going to see one of your doggies, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have two little doggies here, so since we're showing our pets, I'm gonna showcase them. They definitely keep me active. Oh, my first dog, Scout, named after Boy Scouts there.
Scout, like, why are you doing this to me? Why?
How old is he? Is he
such a nice, sweet dog? He's about 4.5 years old now.
Oh,
so
I love his little spots here over his eyes. That's very unusual.
Yeah, he's half beagle, half chihuahua. So,
wow.
Fortunately, more beagle. Yeah, he's a very happy-go-lucky, friendly dog. I think he's just more surprised, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in here. And then the other dog is incredibly jealous. Here, you want to hold her up? Because so now she sees me holding one dog, she's jumping around. And my other dog is Saucy.
Oh,
by my son.
And hi, son.
Hi.
Thanks for being the animal handler.
Half poodle, half Shih Tzu.
Shih Tzu.
Good dogs. Good dogs. Good animal handling.
Yeah, good animal handler. We all need our animal handlers.
I'll pretend she can't hear, but this is the better dog of the two.
Oh, she looks so insulted.
Yeah.
Staring at you
You're
like
so disloyal. She just wants attention all the time. So it doesn't matter if we're the owners and we give her food and a loving family. The second a stranger is out there, she just runs to the stranger and says, "Oh, I'm so deprived of love and affection. Please, please, pet me, pet me, pet me."
That's a common dog thing.
Yes.
My dog's the same.
I met this dog in Costa Rica that it had owners, it turned out, but it would just go and it would choose one person to hang with all day. And that person would just be like, you could just see it because it was us one day. And then the next day it dropped us for somebody new. And, it was just like, really?
Yeah.
And then we met its owners. It turns out it has these very devoted owners. So
that's really funny.
They're not.
Well, thank you. They're great.
Yes, very cute. Thank you. And thank you, handler.
Thank you, handler.
Animal handler.
Okay, doggies. Be gone.
Be gone.
Back to the video games.
Who let the dogs out? I couldn't resist. Well, by the time I can resist, it's usually too late. I've already opened my big mouth. But welcome back. And we'd like to talk to you. I mean, you have so many stories you've written, plus you're such a prolific editor. I mean, you're really prolific on both the writing front and exposing readers to new writers. which I mean, I find that a great combo, you know, a lot, not just like my writing, but it's the writing. How does that help you with burnout? I know you were going to give us we talked about maybe talking about how to avoid it or how to
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
overcome
how to
it.
avoid.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
or-
absolutely. And in fact, that's funny that you mentioned that. I did kind of put together a list at the very last second about avoiding burnout, but I didn't mention that whatsoever. For me personally, you know, if I write for a while, I experience burnout very, very quickly. It's not just writer's block. It's just like a disinterest. Like, I've been doing it. I don't really feel like it. And that was one of the original reasons that I became an editor. In addition to writing, I also started doing editing for anthologies, is that it helped me to explore the industry, the genre in a different way. And it helped me to look at writing. Now it's not just me thinking, I want to write the best story. I want to be the best. Here's my voice. But now as an editor, I start looking at, oh, here's what it's like for an editor to receive 1,000 submissions in the course of a week. Oh my God, I have a much more profound appreciation of why it is when I sent my story, it doesn't get replied to for 2 months and I get a form rejection and no personal letter with a personal critique explaining, you know, the mechanics of the English language and storytelling. But now by actually doing this, I'm like, wow, this is what it is to be an editor. And now it helps me to grow in my communications with other authors. And it helps me by being a slush reader to realize, you know what, out of these 1,000 stories that have come in, I literally have 100 of them. 10% of these stories have the title Dead Girl. Yeah, you know, I just realized that I'm never going to write a story called Dead Girl because everybody has that same exact story name. And here's the same story ideas. And now I realize, you know, a lot of the story ideas are rehashings of what is being seen on television, what's popular or what's popular in the news. Or worst of all, I could tell this is a story that was rejected from a themed anthology from like 5 years previously. But now being an editor, I can look at writing from, you know, a structural standpoint, from what stories that they inspire me. When I read slush writing, I think, wow, these are different ways to look at writing that I wouldn't have even considered. And I really want to promote this. Here's different authors, different viewpoints, different ideas, perspectives, story structures, plots, themes. It fills me. It fills my little vat, my pool of imagination here. It just fills it to overflowing again. And it also helps me as I start putting out my own stories for submission to realize by the aggregate of errors of other submitters' work, not to do that. Lessons not to do, you know, and it helps me to structure the ideas, to put the editor hat on, and also just understanding when after my story's been accepted in a publication, that's just the start of the work, because not only are you going through the editing and communications process, there's the accounting and the finance side, there's the publishing side, there's the design side, there's a lot of different moving pieces that, you know, as a writer, you like to say, I know what those are, but if you haven't been involved with it, you don't know what it is that you don't know. And there's a lot that you just take for granted, that I've been accepted, and with the touch of a button, my story is just going to be published in this book, and that's the end of my work. And it's not.
So that must have given you a whole other level of respect for all of that other stuff.
Yes.
I mean, how much work goes into putting a book together?
Yes, absolutely. It's fun. I like editing. I love editing. In fact, to me, doing editing anthologies, it's easier for me to do than it is for writing. Like, I get more personal fulfillment by writing, by the stories that I tell. But for putting together anthologies, I just love doing it. It's so easy for me to do, and I don't have to put in. It's not emotionally exhausting. It's time consuming, and my personal biggest holdback is because I bankroll my own projects, and everything I do ends up being a financial loss because you never sell enough copies to pay authors at the pro rates that you want. So the
You
biggest
mentioned something about it while you're going through all these slush piles, coming across things that you went, oh my God, I'll never do that when I submit. Do you have any of those that come to mind that we can share with people? Elizabeth's like,
Exactly what I was
"Yes."
going to ask. The 5 things, the 5 dead girls you never use,
Yeah, or
Oh,
anything that comes to mind.
zombie stories, the boringest. I have to say, what got me re-inspired to be a writer, I'll always credit this. So in my 20s, I loved horror when I was younger, and I ignored it in my 20s because I wanted to be a professional businessman. I only read memoirs and nonfiction, and I laughed at other people who read horror and genre fiction. And one day I was in the old Borders bookstores, and they had a section on zombie fiction anthologies, and my heart just melted. I remember looking at those thinking, I used to love this reading and I haven't done it in so long. And all of a sudden I want to. And I bought 3 of the anthologies by John Skip and John Joseph Adams at the time and Christopher Golden. And I devoured them. And it got me so excited. I'm like, I got to start writing again. So I credit zombie fiction for reigniting my writing. But there was also a huge influx and a love for zombie fiction at that time. It was the dawn of the Walking Dead series, and everybody was talking zombies. But 5 years later, it was not in vogue any longer, and everybody else was doing it, myself included. And I recognized that. I'm like, I'm not going to do it anymore. And 10 years later, people are still doing it, and I read it, and it's just one of those things that you think, oh my God, it's been done to death so much. And I understand that a lot of newer writers that come in, you want to emulate the material that has inspired you, the things that you enjoy. And so people will write zombie fiction, but it's so hard to find a market there. And that has to go for any trope. If I open up a story and it says, here comes a vampire and it wants to suck your blood, I'm probably out. Here's a werewolf, here's a mass murderer. That's another one that I tend to find really boring, are serial killer, mass murderer stories. Anything that has a familiar trope sense to it, I personally tend not to be interested in, because there's plenty of markets out there that will do that. But I like to see the ideas that are kind of put on their head. I like to see a little bit deeper dives into the dark imagination. I like to see the stories about normal people who are living life, but just something out of the corner of their eye has gone a little bit askew. And then when they turn, they realize there's a whole greater realization that the world was just not as they imagined, and how it affects them. So yeah, looking for the stories that come in for the submissions to stay away from. Following the common tropes is huge. Stories with excessive gore, splatterpunk, again, there's markets out there for that. It's not for me, because I like my stories to be able to be read by high schoolers, by high school students as much as adults. Erotica, likewise, that there's a market for it, but just stories with, basically, if we're in a movie theater, I like stories that are PG-13. I like watching stories that are rated R, and there's a gray area, and there's a soft R and there's a hard R. The stories of the excessive gore, excessive violence, anything that's overly excessive, it takes, in my opinion, that takes away from the story. You're reliant on the shock value of the story. And I'm a fan of it as much as anybody else in the right situation. Yeah, I like devouring it, but it's not what I want to write, and it's not what I want to promote as my voice in the horror genre. And the horror genre incorporates all these voices, and everybody else's voice is just as relevant as my own. But me personally, I do the Twilight Zone. What I write and what I publish, that's what I like to say in my stories. They tend to fall in historically the Twilight Zone, or in modern TV Black Mirror. Black Mirror stories that they're dark. They're still dark, and they speak to what we see around us in society, and the horrors of technology, the horrors of cultural change, the horrors of just how we envision our lives.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, I know personally, like The Lottery is one of the most chilling stories, and there's no huge gore. There's no, it's so horrifying because it's so real.
Yeah.
Because it's this little town and you could imagine it happening anywhere. And I think that's, so when you say the out of the corner of your eye in this normal place, you know,
it starts off very normal and it just has this slow dawning that something is going amiss. And by the ending, it's just that chilling shock of, oh my God. And that's a story that's timeless. Yeah, I wish, like I said, all my writing was timeless. It was relevant back when it was written, and it's still relevant today.
yeah. And also sometimes with horror movies, or, you know, or where there's gore. I mean, some of the most awful things are one where they just, you know, I remember there's a scene in I, Claudius where Caligula's just sliced open his sister, but you don't see it. You just see him coming out saying, don't go in there. And your imagination does the rest. And it's more graphic and it's more horrifying. And yet at the same time, it probably won't wake you up screaming as easily as being the thing. I don't know.
So, Eric, do you think, I mean, so we were talking about avoiding burnout or tips for getting through burnout. And I don't know if it was a sidetrack talking about editing or if that was sort of one of your big tips. I wanted to know if you had any other really specific things for people who don't edit. I mean, for people who aren't doing that, anything specific as a writer?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I did get off track. I apologize.
And that was fun. It was great. It was interesting.
I ramble a lot tonight.
That's what we're here to trap you in.
It's really weird. As another aside, my day job is a technical writer, and I teach brevity and concision in writing. And I follow that, but then again, when I speak, I have lectures, and I can, if I've said the same thing 10 times, and I stay on track, and it can get dull. But yeah, when we're just freehand chatting, I do get.
That's okay. Some really cool things come out of that. So,
yeah. But I'm excited about writing. I love writing, and I love indie publishing and horror fiction, and yeah, I don't know. It's not a conversation I get to have every day with individuals, so it's very appreciated. Anyway, I started to put together a general list. I was thinking of something that was a little bit different rather than just, 5 tips to publish your first short story. But at least in my position, I start thinking about, here's the career of a writer. Because I see so frequently, I'm always on the hunt for writers whose voices I want to promote, or writers that I really enjoy their writing. And then after a couple of years of writing, they're not doing it anymore. Yeah, that could be anything. There's life changes, and more power to them. Maybe they wanted to start a family. Maybe they got a different occupation. I don't know. You hear things all the time from individuals that say, I loved writing and I stopped, and then they come back to it 20 years. Some people are just affected by burnout. It's, the process of writing, it can be very exhilarating. It can be very healing, but honestly, it's exhausting too. It's emotionally exhausting. So I started thinking about, ways to keep yourself involved in writing industry beyond 5 years. Because a lot of authors, they'll start out real hard. They celebrate the first couple of story acceptances, and then they realize, I'm not getting that deal with Random House. What's going on? I thought that was going to happen after I published my first short stories, and they're depressed and they go away. So my some tips I was thinking about, the very first one off the top of my head is networking. Man, networking is so huge. Nobody could do this job in a bubble. There are the stories like Jane Austen. She wrote by herself in a little Victorian cottage in the moors of England, and never ever associated with other people except her sisters, who happen to also be other authors. So at least she could relate. But the rest of the world, if you're a writer, man, you need a network. not just with fans, but ideally you really, really want to try to build up a fan base, as incredibly difficult as that is. But network with other writers, just people that you could commiserate with, people that you could share stories with, people that you can just ask questions to. Connect with people who have been in the industry much longer than yourself, that can give you advice, that can act as mentors. Also, if you've been in the industry for a while, connect with people who are just starting out, because they will remind you of the challenges that are still out there, and they will bring to your attention things that you've forgotten, or maybe just changes in the industry that you weren't aware of. Connect with editors, connect with publishers. These are the people who are going to publish you. So obviously you want to connect with them as much as you can, but also obviously not in a gross way. You want to promote other people's work, enjoy and embrace. You should be a reader as much as you're a writer anyway. So talk about those works that you're reading that are exciting to you. You know, share the publishers that are out there doing good work. My second tip also, and it ties in with networking, it's being graceful in the community. That has to do a lot with social media. It also has to do with just responding on submissions to editors. We hear stories all the time about, and it's happened to me too, and I have my own little black list of authors that you have to say, unfortunately, the story just isn't for me. Better luck elsewhere. And the author will write back, you know, F you, you don't know writing at all. I'm gonna prove you wrong. And you just think, you know, or you feel that way, but it's hard for me to send off rejections because I'm a writer. I don't want to be rejected. I hate receiving a rejection. And it's even more emotional for me because I can get a sense for writers who've written a while and they send in story after story. They know what a rejection is, and you're like, you're not for me. You know, we could part ways and be friends down the road. But you really get a sense for a lot of authors that are just starting out, and they're sending in their first, their second story, and it's like that little child. They want somebody to ask them to prom dance. Like, please accept me, please. And you're like, I gotta reject you, but I want to do it as nicely as I can. But it's heartbreaking. As an editor and a slush reader, it is heartbreaking. Like, it keeps me up at night sometimes thinking, and I feel so bad having to like break these people's dreams. And then it's like my ego, like, why do I even care? It's not like they think I'm like this great publisher, but it is just that sense that they've put their heart out on their sleeve to me for their work, and they want me to love it unconditionally. But you know, it's one of those, you know, the life lessons that you have to unfortunately impart. But in any case, again, being civil with individuals around you, with reviewers, we hear those stories all the time. An author, they don't like what a reviewer has to say, and they're going to take them to task out on social media. And that's like the collapse of that author's career. As writers, we encounter bad reviews. I don't like them. But you also have to recognize not everybody in the world is going to love your writing. In fact, most people probably, you know, they're going to say, yeah, at best, it's okay. You know, maybe you get a few staunch supporters of what you put out, but that's what the review process is. You take the bad, you take the good, you grow for it. So again, just being graceful in all that you do and in all of your interactions. You not necessarily have to like people, like what's written about you, but at least be respectful to those around you. My third suggestion is especially for short story authors, is track your submissions. You have to have a tracking process. And that's something that I think a lot of newer writers completely don't recognize. And it comes back to bite them in the future, because if you are doing this in the long term, you're naturally going to build up those trunk stories, the stories that you want to keep sending off, and you lose track. Did I send it to this publisher already? And now I'm resending the same thing over and over again, which is also not good for networking and as well as wasting the editor's time. So Tracking your submissions, because it also helps for you to measure your growth. You could see the amount of work that you're publishing, which is hopefully increasing, at least in quality, maybe in quantity. Not that you're just publishing everything that you write, but you're hopefully receiving more acceptances maybe than when you started out, which will tell you you're doing something right. You're writing work that is meaningful and speaking to what publishers and audiences want to hear. Also tying back to rejections, I think I kind of mentioned this, so it was a separate tip, is don't take rejections personally, and understand that rejections are just a numbers game. It's just everybody gets rejected. Everybody gets rejected, chances are, way more times than they are actually accepted. The little silver lining to that I always like to say is just remember that every rejection is an opportunity for improvement, which is true. Your story gets rejected, go back and revise it, reread it, especially because your rejection by the time you've submitted and rejected, it's probably been 6 weeks down the road. So re-looking at a story 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months later after you've written it, you'll see things that you didn't recognize or realize back when you first wrote it. You revise it, you send it off again. Another 2 or 3 months pass, it comes back, you reopen it again, you think, you know what? Now I realize something else, some other plot hole or some clumsy writing, or in my mind, I made this leap between the character motivation and their action, but I didn't put it down on paper, and I can kind of understand why it's not being accepted. And then my last tip is just don't stop writing. That perseverance is key. Don't stop writing. Even if you're not getting published, even if you're getting those rejections, hopefully if you're writing, you're doing it for the love of writing anyways, especially if you're an indie author, you're not making money off of it. Kind of the hard truth is very few authors make enough money to have a career. And in their case, they can hate it if they like it, because at least they're making money to pay their mortgages. But most authors involved in the indie realm, you might make a little bit of money off of it, but you probably can't support a family or buy a house. So chances are you want to at least get enjoyment out of it, get love out of it. Again, it could be healing. It could just be you just want to, have fun. So again, even if those rejections are coming, just don't stop writing. Keep trying to grow. Keep writing those stories. Perseverance is key. Perseverance does pay off in the long run.
On Twitter last week, I don't remember the name of the author, I'm sorry, author, but he was saying that one of his, I think his high school teachers had a t-shirt that says something along the lines of, what's the difference between a published author and an unpublished author? Perseverance. Patience, perseverance.
That's a good one.
And I was going to add too, just for people who aren't aware of it, one of the ways that I've tracked my submissions and has been so helpful is using both Duotrope and the submission grinder. And they have everything, they have all that stuff for you to find different markets, and you can track it. So I've caught myself ready to resubmit. I even had to pull something recently because I did miss it. As soon as I submitted it, and I went back and I went, I already submitted this story to them, wrote them a little note saying, pull it. So, but it really helps having that tracking for sure.
Yeah.
I love the grinder. Yeah, the grinder and Duotrope are wonderful. Duotrope is the paid version, but yeah, for those who don't know, the grinder is the free version of Duotrope, and it's incredibly useful, especially for short story authors. Going in and just trying to find those markets.
Yeah, such a gift. I think that they've done a great job, because when you put in your statistics for fantasy or whatever, each market that comes up pops up in an individual tab, and it can go directly to the guidelines, and it just saves steps. It's really, really helpful. Yeah, they're great.
Great. And also I love your tip about just reading. I mean, if you don't feel like writing, okay, go read and fill yourself up again, because I mean, there are a few times I have met writers who aren't readers, and that's just a little odd to me, because why would you do something that you haven't been? I mean,
Yeah, they're not going anywhere with their writing. It's
because you sort of got, yeah, you've got to love to read, but that can fill you up again. And yeah, it gives you new ideas and just, yeah, it's just
like say, I want to be a professional baseball player. I don't play baseball. I don't watch baseball. I don't really follow. I don't care about the teams, but my talent is going to be recognized, and I'm going to be called up by the Dodgers next week.
Exactly. No, I met one guy at a writers group. He was just like, I don't know. He bought his turtlenecks and he was ready to go.
Wire rimmed circular glasses too.
Here I am.
The coat with the corduroy patches over the elbows.
Yes.
I've met those writers too. They're like, I'm not gonna taint my mind with other writers' ideas. Only my own creativity is going to overflow and I will show the world. And yeah, they are so staunchly vehement about their ideas and their opinions. And it's like talking to a conspiracy theorist. There's no arguing against it. Their mind is made up and you think they're crazy, but they think you're crazy. And it's
yeah, or they don't care. They just want to go to the opening party.
Yeah.
And then they find out like you've published something and stuff and still aren't famous. And they're like, but I've got my turtlenecks. There really was one guy who I met, especially had his turtlenecks. I was like, yeah, it was the first one I met who was so kind of, shocking where it's like, really, are you that unaware?
I'm just imagining Steve Jobs, like a Steve Jobs character there, and I had a writer very prim and proper and very not that he was prim and proper, but just his visage there and very stern.
Yes, very. So thank you. And we'd love to have you back sometime. There's so much we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about your novels, but which I hope sometime to talk about. But thank you so much. And we end every week. It's been harder a little lately with the best things I learned this week.
Oh, no, not again.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
Didn't
oh,
learn two
no,
of them.
another good thing.
Man,
Well, you've got 2 kids, right?
Yes.
One kid. Okay, now it's my little boy that's the joy. Last time it was the girl. But I do have a couple. One is for some unknown reason, it's been a really good year for Monarch Butterflies. They've increased
nice.
the number a lot and they were really, really going down. I don't know why this is. Keep planting milkweed, keep fighting Monsanto, like don't get complacent, but so that was one good thing. And then one more thing, it is a little personal, but I got an article in Clark's World this week on some coral work I did in the winter with my husband. We went and we grew coral and we planted it and cleaned it and did the whole coral. And there are projects like this in various places. Bonaire has a really active one. And so I was just really thrilled to get this piece out because yes, when you publish a short story, it's all that, oh, I'm so excited, but this is more than just me or my writing. It's just about this project. And I'm really glad to get that out there. And I'm really thankful that Clarksville wanted to publish that as a nonfiction piece. And so I guess
That's huge.
Because we have a time gap. What month, because we have a little lag before things get edited now, what month should someone look for that? Or should we put a link below? How about if we put a link below?
Oh, I'll put a link below. Yes, but it's
Yeah.
July. It's July 2022. That's a really good thing. And I will put a link below. So yeah, and that's
Yeah,
it's fun. And
that
Neil
is
Clark has a
exciting.
cute little nonfiction article about how people saying, "Well, you're too old. Maybe you should step aside." And it's like, what?
Wait, what?
It's his magazine. I mean, he's created
People
this
have said that to
amazing
him.
magazine, and he's not even. It's not like he's 102, but even if he was,
Yeah,
Wait, people have said that to him.
yeah, he said he gets this. Oh, well, you should be really in your 20s if you're doing a sci-fi or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it just
It's mind-boggling.
craziness. Yeah,
Mind-boggling.
like
I mean, start your own magazine when you're 20 and build it.
yeah, and maybe
There's
when
that.
you're-
Yeah.
so
So my good thing is, again, Google. that there are more trees on the earth than stars in our galaxy, they figure. There are 1 to 400, yeah, they said they figure in the Milky Way, there's 1 to 400 billion stars. And there's a paper that was published, I'm just reading this from the internet, 2015 in Nature, that estimates that there are 3.4 trillion trees on planet Earth.
That's amazing.
Now, fewer every day, mind you, but yeah. Not crazy.
Yeah, I never would have thought that. That's
No,
fascinating.
never.
I'm a tree person, so.
That's amazing. That I would never, I mean, if it was trivia, I would have lost.
Yeah, I mean, but what are they- yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get baby trees too, you know, they're just
I
popping
was
out.
wondering,
It's a tree.
You know, I just found I had this conversation. I love nature, and I take the boy. I'm a assistant scoutmaster in my son's Boy Scout troop. And I take them out on nature hikes, and my son like challenged me. He's like, I was talking about palm trees, and he said, you know, palm tree is actually a grass. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a name. It's a tree. Look at it. And then I actually had to look that up, and I was like, oh my God, my child, junior high son was absolutely right. The cellular structure, it's a gigantic blade of grass. Interesting.
Crazy, yeah.
that.
Why they don't blow over more, I don't know. Yeah.
Sometimes they do if there's big winds. I've been
Well,
in,
maybe hurricanes, but I mean, we have
Yeah,
big
hurricanes.
winds sometimes, and they just,
yeah.
Yeah, you see them waving just like
They're
blade of
waving.
grass.
see, they're doing the Zoom wave.
All right. Well, if you think anything that's pretty much anything that's round, anything that has a
Harder
round
to,
stem is pretty much going to be a grass. And anything that's a square stem is going to be a mint. And sedges have wedges. So if it's triangular, it's going to be a sedge.
but grasses aren't round on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
A blade of grass isn't round.
Oh, yeah, it
Blade
is. Oh, the flat ones. I see what you mean. But the other part of the grass where it comes up, where it's going to seed, that's round.
Okay. Yeah, yes,
And hollow.
yes.
But
I
you're
got you,
right.
I
You're
got
right.
you.
They're the flat blades. I hadn't thought
But
of
that
that.
could be the same as the leaves, right? The palm leaves are flat. So see, we're digressing to grass.
Or I
blades.
was thinking of bamboo too, because it's a round stem, but all those leaves are not round. Yeah, so you're right.
We're both right. There you
We're
go.
both right.
That's how we
We're
like
all
it.
right. All three of
All
us are right.
We're right, because I learned something new, and I was sharing the rightness of the world.
Well, thank you so much. It has been a delight and a pleasure. One of the delights and pleasures you talked about by avoiding burnout is talking to writers and editors and just getting that enthusiasm for the written word.
Yeah,
Part of the greater community.
yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much. And we also want to say thank you to our wonderful, wonderful director and manager and everything, Maria Korloff, and our great editor, Sydney Levinson. We couldn't do it without you guys.
We couldn't. And if you enjoy the video, please like it and leave comments below. We'd love to know what you're thinking. And be sure to subscribe to our channels so that you won't miss any future episodes. And if you want to support MetaStellar, the magazine, you can visit our Patreon page and do that there. And all the money we receive goes to paying for original fiction. We pay the authors. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you again
Eric.
for having me on. I really
you.
appreciate your time, and it was wonderful chatting with both of you.
It was so
Very
much fun.
fun. So thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All right, we'll do the Zoom wave.
Nice.